Hey, just wanted to say real quick that the beginning of this got kind of cut off, but it's okay. You really didn't miss anything. It was just like pleasantries and whatnot. Today we have Lee Milby on. She's a director I worked with on a film called DNet. Really great director. She's really easy to work with. Really great person. So yeah, enjoy the podcast. Excuse my sickness. I'm still recovering from an illness, but I'll be better. You don't have to worry for me. Also, I want to add a quick shout out to Chrissy Manzione, or Miss Manzione. Oops, I didn't ask her how to pronounce her name. I only met her once in person. Sorry. Anyway, she did the logo for this podcast, so go over to her Instagram and check out all her other stuff. She does really great work. Her Instagram handle is at Chrissy Manzione. Go check her out. I'll put a link to her in the show notes. All right, now on to the show. Find out eventually. Oh, technically,
Technical
yeah.
difficulties.
So,
Okay, yeah. No, I can totally relate to that.
Give people a little background on you. Like, who are you?
Putting me on the spot. Well, I started as a fine artist. I was an oil painter and a visual artist for many years. I started painting when I was 3 years old, and I continued to paint all through middle school, high school, college. I attended Pratt first, and then I went to the Cooper Union. I transferred to Cooper Union back when it was still a full tuition scholarship school. And I continued to do oil painting there, and I also did performance art. And then I became very sensitive to oil paint fumes, so I had to stop oil painting completely. And since that had been my track, that had been my entire career, like choice, goal, what have you, since I was very young, that's all I imagined myself doing. I had to really do like a 180 pivot and figure out my life after college. This happened pretty much in my senior year. So right after my thesis exhibition where I showed like all my oil paintings, that was basically the last time that I could really be around oil paint. And so after graduation, I had to like re-examine my entire life and choose a different career. And eventually, like I got into film and video first, then film, like narrative film.
I don't think you ever told me that before. The allergy part.
Oh yeah. Well, it comes up until I forget who I tell and who I don't tell. But that's why I got into film and video. It was really because so I had this DSLR camera that a lot of people are familiar with. It's an entry-level prosumer type of way to get into video and film, like videography in quotes. I hate the word videography, by the way.
Really?
Yeah, no, I feel like it's demeaning in a way. But I can see where the term applies. So if it's like events, then I think videography is the term. But I think if it's anything where you are directing it, it should be deemed direction. Like I do a lot of music videos, so I consider myself a music video director. But it's because my role in it is I'm usually working with a DP. I don't prioritize camera over everything else. And so I feel like my role is more of a direction situation than it would be videography, especially considering half the time I'm not even shooting it.
Okay.
That's a different thing entirely. But basically, after graduation, I had this DSLR camera, and I decided I didn't want to leave New York City. I wanted to stay in New York City at any cost and stay doing creative stuff. So I took my little camera out into the world, and I started shooting photos at parties, nightlife, raves, anything that came up. And I would do video, and I started doing video and photo since that was a popular ask. And everybody was like, oh, you're doing photo, would you get some video clips too? Or, oh, you're doing video, would you mind snapping a few photos along the way? And so from there, I really got into like video work and then music videos and then narrative film.
So why with the painting? How come you
didn't just switch over to acrylic? Is it that much different? Like
Yeah.
from oil?
It's absolutely, there's nothing like oil painting. There's things that you can do with oil painting that are very special and unique, and it's just such a historic medium. Acrylic never really had the same. I mean, I'm actually working on a painting commission now in acrylic because somebody saw an old oil painting of mine that I did online, and they are paying me to kind of recreate it. And that was another thing. Is my paintings were very large scale. Like one of the bigger ones was like 16.5 feet by 9.5 something.
Is that the book one?
No. That was. Oh, so I did show you my paintings.
I've seen your paintings. Yeah, you're very good. There was one you showed me once that was really gothic and evil and stuff that I liked.
Oh, the hands one?
I can't remember exactly what it was. I think it was like, I thought there were skeletons.
Oh, Ophelia. Yeah.
Yeah, there was a chick and it was skeletons. Something like that.
It's based on like the story of Ophelia like drowning herself from a Shakespearean play.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So I mean I like that. That's on my But yeah, very large scale. That one is probably I want to say it's like 6 feet tall, that one, that painting that you're describing. So they're pretty large scale. So basically this guy saw the books painting online because I still do SEO, search engine optimization, on my website. So I added tons of keywords when I put my paintings up back when I was doing painting. So that if you searched certain keywords, like this guy was just searching for books painting, and my painting came up like number 1. So through a series of events, that guy's husband decided he wanted to buy that painting. That painting was too big for his house, so now he commissioned me to paint a new one that will fit in his house.
Same thing?
Similar, it's actually his husband, the person who found my painting first, the reason why they were looking for that was because they wanted a painting of books for the cover of a book that he was publishing. So they licensed the image, which because of my SEO, like I had a lot of my photography and like paintings licensed, which was like passive income. It was really nice. So they licensed the image for this book cover. Then the guy's husband, the writer's husband, comes to me wanting to buy the painting, yada yada. So the books painting he's commissioning me to do contains images of the husband writer's books and like his library of all the books that he's read and like that means something to him. So it's actually a really sweet commission.
Okay.
So I've been working on that. It's actually over there somewhere.
Yeah, I guess you're probably not allowed to show it yet, or not ready
to. It's not in the right place. But I kind of treat it the same way as like video and other commission work. Like I generally don't want to like share it without permission of the person, or at least without it like being out there. But
yeah, it makes sense.
Yeah.
So do you do a lot of that kind of painting, or has it taken a real back seat?
It's really taken, like I only do it if someone seeks me out and pays me to do it. Aside from that, it's really not a huge part of my life right now. So like when I make a decision to do something, then it's really important to me that I follow through. So when I made the decision to switch to video and film, for me it needed to be a complete switch. So I completely stopped painting at that time. I completely stopped everything else that I was doing and only focused on going that track. And I've always just been that kind of like hyper-focused person. And I think like, especially having not gone to film school, that sort of mentality helped me out because I think I ended up learning a lot in a shorter period of time.
Yeah.
But
I wonder if film it's probably, I would imagine it's the same way as it is for audio, where, because I'm the same way with audio production, where I'm pretty much completely self-taught. I learned a little bit in college, but vast majority of it was self-taught, and I think I probably gained a lot more in practical experience learning myself than most people coming out of the school did. And I learned on much cheaper gear, so I kind of learned how to do everything guerrilla style.
Mm.
Whereas a lot of people who learned in school learn on really good equipment, and then they're kind of, when they don't have that equipment, they don't know how to work without it.
Yeah.
A lot of times.
I've seen that, definitely. Definitely, I mean, but everybody knows this, and I'm working with NYU students, so they shouldn't take offense. But there is this kind of a stereotype about film students, like NYU students, anybody who comes out of like a film school, who, like you said, has worked on top of the line equipment. That's what they're used to. They've been taught by professors how to do everything the right way. Sometimes those students, when they're placed on a set out in the real world, they have a harder time thinking on their feet and problem solving on set. So when they encounter a problem, sometimes they just have a harder time figuring out solutions on the spot because they're so used to just the routine of things. So that's one benefit that I think you and me, people like you and me, have coming at it from a different direction, or maybe having life experience that's a little bit different, that we can creatively problem solve and look at a situation from a different perspective. Whereas these other people, if their entire life has just been film and just been film in a certain way on a certain path, then I think it's harder for them to think outside the box. Like they're basically in this like tunnel vision situation. Sometimes.
And we're not knocking higher education by any means. It's something that I noticed, and apparently you've noticed too.
Yeah, it is something I've noticed. I love film in particular, this industry, because it's very much, in many ways, it's a meritocracy. Because if you show up, nobody's looking at what school you went to necessarily or your accolades on paper. It's all about your reel and what you've produced.
Yeah.
So you work on some great things, write great stories, create great music, what have you, and people will recognize that in you, and they'll want to work with you. And that's basically how it works. You network, et cetera, et cetera. So you can come at it from any angle, any background, any industry, and as long as you have the skill to back it up and have something to contribute that other people want, then you're in.
Yeah. And really, the skill has to be treated as a prerequisite too, because you might not necessarily get a job based on the merits of your skill. It's more about, are you cool? Are you decent to work with?
Yeah, and that's, well, I think that's part of the package too, because film being a team effort, you have to have people skills. Like that's part of the skill set. And I've definitely seen situations where, in the hiring process, people have had to make a choice between someone on one hand who's brilliant at that role, whatever that role is, whether it's like DP, music, etc., acting, or someone who's just really easy to get along with and is going to show up on time and be a team player and help everyone get the job done. And sometimes, especially in the indie world, you really might want to lean toward the latter because it is a team effort and you have to keep checking your egos and work together and make sure that you're all on the same page and have the same goals. And yeah, it's just part of the skill set. It's part of what makes it's a machine. It's a
I definitely think from the indie world, I think your punctuality matters more than your skill because so many films get screwed up by people not showing up or something like that. I mean, I actually mentioned on the last podcast I was talking to my previous guest about the film we did a little bit and what we went through.
About that too.
That was a nightmare.
I was actually talking to somebody about that today. I was working with so I'm doing also just to go back to something I was talking about earlier. So I am in some capacities I'm still working in the 2D medium because so I went to art school, did all the painting, got into film, video, and I kind of circled back because now I'm doing storyboarding. Like a lot of storyboarding work is coming my way. So I had always done storyboards and drawings, illustrations for my own work, and for me, it's been a really great form of communication. Like sometimes it's just easier and faster for me to sketch out a scene than it is for me to explain the whole thing. So I just through contacts and everything, I ended up getting getting recommended for like illustration and storyboarding gigs. And I forget what I was going to say. What was your question again? Now I got sidetracked.
I don't remember. So
I don't know. So earlier today, now I remember. So earlier today, I was working on a storyboarding project with an NYU student. I've been working with a number of NYU students. I do commercial work, but I give these NYU students like a student discount, and any other project that comes my way that's interesting and cool, and I want to draw it, I'll give it a discount. But anyways, this kid was over at my house, and we're working together, you know, telling each other like war stories, and that was one of them. And because he's actually working as a producer, he's helping somebody else produce his. And I was like, oh man, do I have a production story for you? So we just got into it. And because I think there's a lot of things that went wrong with that film that we both worked on that I brought you on. And what part of it was like people not showing up, part of it was like a lack of teamwork, and lots of miscommunication, just tons of miscommunication. But what were you telling other people?
No, I told, basically what I told them was that you had an actress / producer that was a diva and thought you were talking shit about her, but you weren't. It was like some misunderstanding, and that it basically derailed the whole film. Like,
yeah,
we were working on
that's sorry. Well, I was in the wrong in that I said something that could be misconstrued. Like, I never should have said anything negative about the production. So, and I take full responsibility. At the end of the day, I was the director and I was the one that funded it. So it was my folly. And it was definitely a learning experience. And I feel really, really badly about how that all ended up happening. But that said, I mean, that was a huge role in it not working out too. And yeah, so to recap, what happened was like there's a phone call and I was talking to somebody who wanted to work on the film, but I just felt like nothing wrong with them, but just that their style of their artistry didn't fit like the artistic vibe that I was going for with the film. And so I was trying to like talk to them and make them not feel so bad about being rejected, essentially. And one of the things that I was saying was like, oh, you know, this is like, it's kind of like it's a smaller, it's not like a huge production. It's like it's not like a big commercial thing. It's just this, it's kind of like our other shoots and that are smaller scale, and something about like, I said something to the effect of that, like, it was kind of disorganized, how the shoot was going, and it's true. Like, I thought that was something that everyone knew, that the film like coming together that we were putting together was a bit disorganized because like the producer and the actress producer had both never produced anything really before, and
I see now, yeah.
And so I was just making a joke about it, just like, look at what we're dealing with, and it wasn't directed at anyone. It was more directed at myself and like how crappy like I had allowed this thing to happen. And I said it in front of the actress thinking that she was like in on the joke. And apparently she wasn't because she went and she told the other producer behind my back that like, oh, I was like talking about, she construed it as like I was directly insulting the producer. Like,
which would make sense because the producer's the one that's in charge of how well the film's going, like organized.
Yeah, but technically like, well, I wasn't the producer role, but I was the director, so I was like a head of department.
Yeah. But for her, she probably thought you were attacking her job.
Yeah, I think that's how it was understood. But instead of like, well, instead of the actress like coming over to me because she was in the room with me when I said that, instead of her coming over to me and being like, Lee, why were you talking shit about my friend, or like, that's not cool, or just like having a conversation directly, she went and she told the producer that, and instead of the producer also, or maybe even the two of them coming to me and being like, that's not cool, or like having a conversation with me, the choice that was made was to send an email blast, a mass email blast to everyone on the cast and crew except for me. I never saw the email. Nobody would let me see the email, because apparently it said like really, really like negative, horrible things about me. Did you see an email? I
No,
never.
I was never involved with anybody else in the film but you.
Oh, okay, that's probably for the best. It's like
I'm never involved with anybody else but the director.
Aw. But yeah, so like to this day, I've never seen the email because anytime I ask, I want to see what she said, like I want to understand like the situation. They're like, no, you don't want to see. So she must have said some like really horrible, like terrible, mean things about me, and then she said she was quitting the production, but then I don't know what happened, but she decided she wasn't, and then the rest is kind of history. It just kind of like things fell apart. Yeah, it was just like a lot of miscommunications overall.
Yeah. Well, it's something you can learn from.
Yeah, no, definitely. Probably I don't want to like talk crap too much. I want to focus on the positive. There's a lot more to the story there.
Yeah, we don't need to get into all the details. You don't want, especially you don't want, it could potentially get back around to her in some way anyway, so you don't want to get too in it.
Yeah, I even like reached out afterwards and I wanted to, I felt really terrible that she felt that way. And so even afterwards, I reached out to her and I was like, listen, like, I'm not trying to attack you or anything. I just want to talk to you. And because I know, this is the thing, like someone doesn't get that heated if they don't care about their work. And so that to me, it told me that she really, really deeply cared about the project. And I felt badly that someone who cared that much about the project, that I had made them feel bad. And so I did reach out. I wanted to talk to her and like, just kind of like talk it out and get to understanding each other. But I never heard from her.
Okay.
That's the thing about like people, and that's one thing that is a good and a bad thing, just in general. And I'm guilty of this too sometimes about like when you care about a project really deeply, and this happens with DPs and directors more so notoriously, the ego thing. It is an ego thing when you deeply care about a project and you just get passionate, and sometimes on set discussions can get heated. I don't know if you've observed this or like you've seen it before, but arguments.
I'm never on set.
Well,
but I can imagine. I can assume.
Well, any creative project, I think, when people start debating about things or really, going back and forth about a detail, it's because they really care and they're really passionate. And it kind of goes back to like the teamwork, like getting along versus like the artistry. Like those super passionate people tend to be like really focused on the artistry of it. Like it's their art and it's their identity. And so they feel, I think the feeling is generally, I know this with me, that if you see something that you perceive as being wrong about what's happening, especially artistically, if it's a wrong artistic choice or something like that, you don't want to put your name on it and not feel like it represents your quality of artistry. And so therein lies where you end up getting into arguments and things on set or about a project. And it's a tough situation because it shows that you're like super passionate about your work. Those type of people, like if you give them the freedom and just tell them like go with it, like give them full trust, they can do the most amazing things, amazing, beautiful work. But at the same time, sometimes it's tough to be a team.
Yeah, I guess you really have to establish those ground rules right from the beginning. Like be explicit about like, listen, this is like if you're gonna be like, this is my vision, I just need somebody to execute it. Yeah. But that also comes into, that's where money plays a big factor, because like if you're somebody that's like us, that's kind of on the smaller side of things, you can't really ask somebody to follow your whims that closely because you're not Stanley Kubrick yet. Whereas like once you get to that level, you can be a little more Stanley Kubrick and be like, this is how it's going to be done. It has to be this way.
Yeah. Well, there's also, I mean, I've hired a number of people, and especially being like a woman director, I have to be very careful about who I hire because there's a number of crew. I mean, it's still a male-dominated industry, and it's like it's a fact that there's some people that you'll hire and they won't respect you and won't listen to you just because you're a woman.
Yeah.
And they'll look down on you, especially, you know, there's a physical difference too, because I'm not only a woman, but I'm a very, very small woman. And so when you've got like an entire crew of often a lot of dudes that are like much bigger than you, they sometimes have a hard time, certain people have a hard time like taking someone seriously who's physically much smaller. And so you're fighting that, like, if you're not even eye level with a person, it can be a little difficult to like maintain a power sensibility. So I find that it's really important to hire people that like are vetted really well, and that, like, I always do like in-person interviews when I'm considering hiring or working with somebody, and just like interact with them and see how they treat me as a woman. Oftentimes, because when I'm talking to people online, my name is spelled in a way that it sounds like it could be masculine. So oftentimes people think that I'm a man online when I'm recruiting or when I'm talking to people in general, and they don't realize that I'm a woman until we have our first phone conversation or until we first meet each other for the first time for lunch or something, and they're usually very shocked. And it's not like I'm hiding it. Like on my Instagram, like if you Google my name, my pictures come up. So anyone could know that I'm a woman, and just when somebody is talking to you, you can't necessarily assume that they don't know what your gender is. It's just like not really something that's super conscious. But I do notice that like the way that people treat me sometimes, depending on the person, there will be a shift in the way that they talk to me. It'll be like from talking like normal to as though they feel like they need to treat me like some sort of a creature or something. Like they can't talk to me the same way they did before. It's only sometimes though. Usually.
Yeah, that's. I mean, I understand how that can happen, but that's still weird.
It's like guys that have never spoken to a woman in a business kind of fashion before. They've only spoken to women if they were considering dating them. So they literally don't know how to talk to a woman in any other way.
I guess that was easier for me because I've always had female bosses. Like the majority of my bosses were women, so I'm pretty used to that. Like, so that's not.
Well, I do a lot of like, I do music videos in many genres, and it really depends on the genre. Because there's some genres that are just much more male dominated than others and have a different culture.
Well, yeah, you do a lot of hip hop, so I'd imagine that comes up quite a bit.
Yeah, I even had somebody who hired me to direct a video where after the video was all said and done, he told me, you know what, Lee, when I found out you're a woman, I wasn't going to work with you. But I'm so glad I did, because you did an awesome job and I knew you could do it. So there's a lot to unpack with a statement like that. One is like, he wasn't going to work with me just because he found out that I was a different gender, and he didn't want to work with a woman. Even though my work itself didn't change, like my portfolio stayed the same. It's just the fact that I was a woman and not a man, he just didn't want to work with me anymore. But then another thing to unpack there is that he felt like he was being generous to me by letting me work with him. So he made it about himself being like the man letting the woman work with him, and how generous that was. That's how he kind of like turned it. So it was like, it was kind of like a backhanded compliment, and that he was basically saying that I should be thankful that a man would have let me work with him.
Yeah, I cringed pretty hard when you first repeated that.
Yeah. So when people say that there's like, that women are discriminated against, or when people say that we aren't, I have plenty of stories that directly show that we are, unfortunately. Like that, or even, like I said, the phone, when people find out that I'm a woman via our first phone conversations. One situation was like, I had been talking to this person through texting or email, I forget which one, just digitally, and planning a shoot. Then we get on our first phone call, and they go, "Is this Lee?" And I'm like, "Yes, this is she." And he just hung up. And then I texted him, I was like, "Hey, like, what's going on? Like, are we still doing this?" And they're like, "No, thanks." And I was so confused because everything was going really well until then. And I just like, is this a joke? Like, what's going on? And they told me that they didn't want to work with me anymore. So given the fact that the only thing that happened on that phone call was that they heard my voice and obviously found out my gender, I can't imagine that it was anything else except for that changed the dynamic. And I never heard from them again.
Ooh. That's, yeah. That stuff, like, it's almost like cartoonish. Like hearing that, like
Yeah.
it's something I hear. I think like would be years past, but because like I'm assuming these are younger people, like people that are around our age.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's about like the people that are around you and your upbringing, and it's just certain situations. Like if you're raised in an environment where women are treated a certain way, and you're basically like conditioned to not respect women, then when you're presented with the idea of like having to take a woman seriously, it may be so outlandish that you can't even consider it. So
Yeah.
it's just been, yeah. And I often wonder, like, if my name was spelled a different way, would I not get as many inquiries? Like, I know that one artist told me that he was thankful that he still worked with me despite me being a woman. But how many artists have I worked with that thought that and never said it to my face, but still had that attitude? And I also had somebody put out an ad because he wanted to specifically work with a woman director. And I asked him, I don't know whether I actually can't remember whether I ended up working with this guy or not, but we were having a discussion and I asked him, like, so why did you want to work with a woman specifically? Because it was, I see a lot of like other women artists and things like that seeking a woman director, but it was unusual to me to see a man who was seeking one. So he told me one thing was he wanted to give, I don't know, this is somebody else, but okay. So he basically told me that he knew that if he hired a woman, I would work twice as hard for half the pay. Like, he actually told me that. That he would get his money's worth because he didn't have to pay me that much. Like, he actually thought that was the deal with working with a woman, that you didn't have to pay women that much. And that since we have to prove ourselves so hard in the industry, he was taking advantage of that. And the fact that you just told me this to my face and didn't think it was a big deal to even say that, I don't even remember how I reacted. I think I just was like, okay, well, thanks, I guess.
How old was this guy? Because I'm picturing like an 80-year-old dude saying that.
He's young. I mean, a lot of the people that I work with are young.
That's mind blowing. I can't even fathom that one. That you just broke my brain a little bit with that one.
Yeah.
Like,
I think like people get really comfortable talking with me because I like talking with people. I like picking their brain and like learning things, and I'm pretty like open-minded. I'm like this. I'm also like this. Like, I attract strangeness in my life. Like, I have met the most interesting people and been in the most unusual situations, and so I think people like just open up and they say what's on their mind, and I don't react like harshly to it. Usually, I'm just like, I feel a sense of disappointment, but it's interesting to be able to like hear what's going through their head, and that there's no barrier. But it's like always still surprising when people are that direct about it.
That's kind of an advantage you have, though. If people are comfortable talking to you like that, especially as a director.
Oh yeah.
You know, especially with actors, because you might be able to get it. Having that empathy is really important with actors.
I think so, and I think like that's one thing I mean, there are differences that I've observed between the way that I work and the way that I've seen other women in the industry work versus the way that I've seen a lot of men in the industry work with direction or shooting styles. It tends to be that women are more interested in those quiet moments. There's actually an amazing speech. Man, I'm really bad with names, but I'll send you a link if I can find it later. But this woman was giving a speech. I think she's a filmmaker, and she was just talking about so there's always the male gaze. Have you heard of the male gaze?
Yeah.
So there's the male gaze, and then it's been debated what is the female gaze, because we obviously have a different perspective, but our perspective, because we are treated as second-class citizens often, our perspective has to be empathetic to the male gaze. So often it's tainted or what have you. Our perspective is through the eyes of the male gaze, especially considering media has been a male-dominated industry for so long that all the media, or a lot of the media we consume, has one perspective, one gender's perspective. So we are seeing everything from that perspective, so that it becomes internalized and on a subliminal level, we don't even realize it. And it allows us to accept things because we've been exposed to them in media, like certain jokes or certain attitudes towards women. We're able to accept it because we're just so often exposed. It's normalized.
Yeah.
And
you know where I noticed that in myself, actually, is with racism. Because I notice sometimes I will see maybe I'll see a black person or something, or an Asian person, and have this split second reaction that's and then I look back at it within that split second, I'm oh, why did I have that thought? Because that was I was thinking a stereotype, and it's because it's so in our culture that certain stereotypes exist that it's I can't even get past it myself.
Right.
Even as somebody who grew up I grew up in a black community, going to church. As a kid, I drove down, so it was never an issue, that, but it's still there.
That's really cool that you're aware of that, because I think a lot of people stop at that moment and they don't consciously understand, because we're not born racist. It's a learned behavior. It's learned culture.
Yes and no. I think the specifics of why people are racist is cultural, but I think it is actually, there's you could actually draw there's an evolutionary aspect to racism. As if you go deeper into it's tribalism. Whereas
But even that's learned behavior. So I'm transracial.
Sort of.
I'm transracially adopted, so my whole family is white. And if you're, I think in situations if you're, for example, you're born in a tribe and maybe you're the only person that has a different skin tone, you can, and this has happened to other transracially adopted people, a huge issue is that the transracially adopted person will become trans-ethnic, and that's when your ethnicity is what you grew up in. So if you were raised in a white environment, but if you have different skin tone, you can be racist towards everyone else who has your skin tone, because you don't consider yourself part of them. You're part of the tribe of the other skin tone that you grew up in.
Yeah. And that's why I said it wasn't specifically racism. It got put down more to a tribal thing. Whereas we're programmed to be.
Yeah, I would agree with
have that tribal thing.
I think that there is an instinct of wanting to be part of the group. In order to survive, you have to want to be part of the group.
And I only make that distinction because I think there's a lot of discussion on this topic that's very prevalent right now in our culture, that's not being covered on the whole. people tend to ignore the evolutionary side a lot.
Yeah, I mean, we're all animals, and there's a reason why these behaviors exist. You have to conform to some extent, because in evolutionary standpoint, if you didn't conform to the norms of the group, then what would happen is you'd get ostracized and you would starve to death. So no one wants that. So
and by no means does that excuse anything. I think it's important that people understand these things.
Absolutely.
Because you can recognize it and then, okay, this is a part of our evolution that we should ignore to a certain extent.
Yeah, I think understanding more facets of what's going on just helps us attack it in our culture in a lot more intelligent way.
Yeah.
And I think you could get into all discussions about many situations where people were forced to conform to a group mentality, and that group mentality did terrible things. Like, there's so many examples of that happening. And yeah, I definitely think it has something to do with, it has an involvement with like racism and things like that, and sexism, etc.
I think one of the most egregious in our history in America, I mean, well, obviously we had slavery, but the one that kind of sticks out to me all the time is the one that gets ignored. It's the Japanese internment camps.
Yeah.
It's something that nobody ever talks about.
It's something. Sorry, let me turn off the my Facebook because people are talking. No, I absolutely agree. And there's so many people that don't even know that happened. And it's like criminal. Like, how is our public school system has failed us? I remember being a kid, because I'm Asian, to the people listening who may not know that I'm physically Asian. Oh, okay. So when I was back in like school, early high school, I was taking a history class, and I grew up in an environment where I was the only, like maybe one of 6 or 7 Asian kids at my school of thousands and thousands of kids. Grew up like in a very quiet town, suburbia. And I remember, I'm trying to remember exactly the conversation, but we were in history class, and the teacher was going like, okay, what is affirmative action? And she said, what marginalized groups need affirmative action? And she went down a list of like different races. And she's like, do Black people need affirmative action? And with the answer being like, yes, because they were prejudiced against, obviously, in like slavery, and they're treated terrible. And they're like, do Mexican people need it? Like, yeah, sure. Do Asian people need it? And everybody just kind of looked around, and she's like, no, they don't. There's nothing. She basically said that nothing bad had happened to any Asian people, so we shouldn't be treated differently, or I don't know. And I wanted to say at the time, what about the Japanese internment camps?
Yeah.
But I was a very shy kid. I never spoke up, and I was the only Asian person in the class. And so it was just kind of a conformity thing. I just felt like I didn't want to rock the boat and like not respect the authority figure, which was the teacher, and make her look bad by pointing out this obvious flaw in her logic. And I'm much bolder now. I would hope that if it happened now, then I would like speak up and say something. But at the time, I was just this super quiet kid, and I didn't end up saying anything. But it always stuck with me. I always remembered that. And her having that influence in that classroom and just telling everybody that something that was wrong and erased that history for all those kids in that moment. Hopefully they went on and like learned about it. I always like regret not saying something. But
yeah, I can't remember how old I was when I learned about it. I mean, and I was in a pretty sheltered area too. Like where I grew up was mostly like, the only reason I went to a predominantly Black church was because we drove down like 2 hours out of our way every Sunday. But other than that, like, I was in a pretty white area. But I'm surprised that we even got taught that, because I guess that's good on the school system where I'm from. But it was always weird to me after I learned that nobody talks about it.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's just this weird. Like, even when you do bring it up, people kind of go, eh.
Yeah, but it was actually, George Takei talks about it a lot. He actually experienced it.
Because he was in it.
He was in it. He was imprisoned. He was taken away from his home, imprisoned with his parents. When they were released, their house, I Might be getting this wrong.
His father's business was taken
Yeah,
out.
didn't their house get like stolen from, like someone broke in? I want to say something like that happened too, or maybe
I don't remember all the details, but I know their entire life was gone.
Yeah, their entire life was just destroyed. And is this George Takei's story? I want to say that like he had a moment where his father told him to like not be, because he grew up as an angry kid as a result. And what I remember is like that his father told him, don't be angry, like you're in America, the greatest nation, because what was it? Something about like in a democracy, the majority rules, and you can't have, and the majority won't always be right, but that's part of the values of democracy that you have to like uphold. He said it in a much more eloquent way, but as a result, like he kind of let go of that anger, and it's kind of like, yeah, you have to like take the bad with the good, and this sort of.
Well, I mean, the one thing I would say is his logic was completely flawed right from the beginning. There, what his father said, because one, we are not a democracy; we're a republic, which means we follow the law, not the majority. And so, so that sentiment, I get it, especially because a lot of immigrants do have that mentality.
Mm-hmm.
But how did George cut? Did he ever change his mind after his dad said that?
I want to say that this was George Takei's.
I can't remember his full story. I've heard him talk about it a million times too.
I'm worried that I'm mixing it up with somebody else's story.
Possible.
But
I feel like I remember George Takei saying something along those lines.
Yeah, and the result was that he did. It made him less angry, at least. I mean, who knows? Maybe his father was just saying that to make his son less angry at the world, the way that teenagers tend to do. So it could have been the father looking out for his son's well-being, that sort of situation.
Yeah, another story I know that's similar to that is Joey Diaz. Have you ever heard of him? He's a comedian. He's a really great comedian, but anybody who's listening to him, you better have a certain disposition, because he will destroy whatever your disposition is. But Joey Diaz is immigrant from Cuba. Like he came over from Cuba when he was a real little kid, and I've heard him talk a few times about how like his mother was very strict on him being fully assimilated into American culture. Like they were only ever allowed to speak Spanish in the house, like because he would get like beat up or like picked on for speaking Spanish. Mm-hmm. And she would actually, when he'd come back to her, she would yell at him for speaking Spanish out and about.
Really?
So that's a common immigrant mentality. Like what I think more like the old guard. I think.
Oh, actually, no, that's true. Like in my family, my uncle married a Japanese woman, and when they had kids, she refused to teach them Japanese or anything about the culture because she wanted them Americanized. And so they ended up speaking only English, which my parents and I share the same opinion that it was kind of like who doesn't want to know Japanese? Like it would have been like, it's cool to be bilingual, and it's unfortunate that.
It's an advantage.
Yeah, I think it's an advantage, but I understand the desire that they want to have their kid assimilate and become part of this new tribe that they've entered to try to give their kid a better life than they had.
I also wonder if that's them projecting from their own culture, because the Japanese culture, from what I know, is very
very conforming.
Yeah. Like you can, even if I were to immigrate over to Japan, I would never be, even if I was a citizen, I would never fully 100% be considered a citizen over there. Because I'm not. I think even if somebody was born here who is of Japanese, it's not. It's like there's a weird.
Oh yeah, I think in a lot of Asian cultures. I mean, I feel weird speaking about Asian cultures because I personally haven't had much experience with it. Like I didn't grow up in an Asian culture. I've only observed just as much as probably you have. But yeah. I feel more sensitive to things that happen to Asian people because I'm biologically Asian. But that is one thing that I think does ring true across a lot of Asian cultures, even Indian, South Asian, is the sense of conformity and blood relationships. Yeah, I think what you're saying of just like what is like a real Asian person. I've actually encountered that like with so being adopted, like sometimes I'll encounter like an Asian person who grew up Asian and doesn't consider me to be Asian enough or something. And
I've heard that a lot.
yeah, like there's some sort of threshold where like if you go past this point, you're Asian, and if you're below this, then you're not quite Asian. So I've actually been told by Asian people and also people of other races, but particularly Asian people, that it's necessary for me to go find my real roots and go find my real parents and my real culture and all that stuff. And they feel that like I'm not a whole person and that my identity is wrong. Like not just like that my identity is different, but that my identity is wrong and offensive because because I don't have Asian pride and that my entire life goal is to like bring all this other culture into my life. And I personally don't have any desire to do any of that. Like I've never.
It should be a personal choice.
Yeah, it's a personal choice. And I've told people that. And I've just said that like, well, personally, I don't really feel the desire to do that. And I've had people get very angry and just say that like, that's not right. Like that's offensive because so the Asian person would say like, that's offensive to them because it makes me saying that says that there's no reason to be proud of Asian culture, and they take it personally offensive to them. But that's not what I'm saying. It's just a personal choice on my part. Like, who are they? Who's a stranger to tell me how to live my life and what my identity is, or how valuable my identity is? I actually, yeah.
And like for me, like I'm mostly Irish. There's no pressure on me at all to go back to the homeland and find my Irish roots. Although I'd love to go there one day.
Ireland would be amazing. My family is Irish, and so I basically consider myself to be like Irish. Because just like my first experience with a culture that wasn't American was with my grandmother, who had the Irish accent, spoke a little bit of like Irish, and she would like bake Irish soda bread. It was like going to her house was like going to a different world. That was my first experience with another culture, and that was my first like authentic, what I would consider authentic in my own family experience of having any nurturing or being raised by someone of another culture in my family. So if anything, like I would consider myself Irish because that was my personal experience.
Yeah.
So when people come at me and they're like, oh no, the culture that you grew up in doesn't matter. And all of your experiences don't matter. The only thing that matters is something that you haven't experienced and that is impossible for you to experience firsthand. Because so if I were to go to the home country or whatever, I think my friend's here.
That's fine. Momentary pause. I will try to entertain while she's gone, but I'm not good at this whole solo thing, which is why I have guests on. Hopefully, after a few more podcasts, maybe 10 or 20, I'll be more comfortable being on camera alone. Right now, I'm just rambling.
Wait.
Oh, she's in the camera.
Okay, so hold on. Okay, two things might be. So I have this friend coming over. She's a producer. I probably should have told her I was doing this. I totally forgot to tell her.
Oh, you didn't tell her about this?
Yeah, so she's coming, but she doesn't feel very well, so when she comes, I'm going to have to go answer the door. Anyway, so she might be, and then my significant other, he's been calling, so now I'm worried that he's like, because he just shows up sometimes. Now I'm worried that he's going to come here, not knowing that I'm doing this, plus I have this other person coming here.
Like, who's that guy?
I don't have enough beds in my house to fit all the people. Anyway, so she's going to, hopefully she'll find it. Okay. Well, I just want to finish up that thought. It's just like, if I went to, this other country who I have no personally firsthand experience with, then my only experience of that culture is to like learn it basically secondhand. Like I could go there as a tourist, and as much as I would like, integrate like looking the part and all of that, and like maybe, some people say that they like feel something stir inside of them and all that. It's still like not something I grew up with inherently. It's not. I didn't grow up with learning the mannerisms and and smelling the sense of the cuisine and like speaking the language. I didn't have that firsthand authentic experience growing up and being nurtured by that culture. So as an adult, for me, like, you know, at my age, to go over there and to try to make it my main identity or something, the way that I think a lot of people have pressured me in the past too, it just doesn't make sense to me. I know other adopted people do that and they feel very strongly about that, but for me personally, it just is not in my identity. Be right back.
Okay. Let's hope she wants to be on this.
Hi. Oh, your hair! Oh, by the way,
This is going to be a weird podcast.
I hope are you dead? I'm dead. Oh no, you sound terrible. Okay, can you take off your shoes? Yes. Oh, put your thing. Oh, you got a pillow. Okay. I did. Oh, sorry. Okay, hold on.
Making a podcast on somebody. Okay, sorry. I gotta fill the silence because I forget. I'm filming this, but there's also the audio. It's mostly audio, and then.
Okay.
Oh, she's back on.
I'm kind of back on. So, oh wait, tell me.
Does your friend want to be on? Because I want her to have full consent before she's on here.
Oh, so I'm doing this podcast, and it's like he was interviewing me about.
That's very professional of me.
I was gonna say like maybe you could join in, but her voice is like super scratchy. Her voice is really scratchy.
Oh, okay. Well, you know, we can just start closing up then, and then.
Okay.
Yeah, because I don't want your friend to be
sitting
sitting
there
there.
talking about like filmmaking. I don't know if that's what we're supposed to talk about.
Well, it's kind of freeform. I mean, the filmmaking is the focus. Where, like, I'm trying to bring on people that are artists, entertainers in that vein, like, not specifically filmmaking, but I want to keep it slightly narrow. I guess I'll just ask you the main question that I ask everybody. What's your big what's the thing that you feel holds you back the most?
Well, probably myself. Like, I know that I could be a lot better about communication and working with people. So I think like you are your own worst enemy, and in a lot of respects, like there's still so much that I can like learn and grow and get better at. And so in any situation, I think it's always like me not having enough knowledge, or like me having a learning curve, or like just needing to have more experience, all of that. But I think that's true for everyone. Everyone who's like striving to achieve more in their life and like get to a different level in their career, like it's always yourself that's going to hold you back. And it's not something that's concrete. You can always change it. You can always learn and grow. So cheers to the future, I guess.
Well, one thing I will say on your part, you're actually much better on the communication thing than you'll give yourself credit for, because, I mean, I worked with you, and I had an easier time communicating with you on that film than with most directors I've worked with.
Aw, thank you.
I mean, that might be partly because we kind of wrote it together.
Yeah.
That was a fun story, too.
Yeah.
And
we should definitely work together again. It's been a long time.
Definitely. Well, if you have anything coming up.
Yeah. I've been wanting to write more. Yeah, I remember that now. It's all coming back to me.
Yeah, well, that was an emergency thing, that was an accidental emergency. I was only coming on as a composer, and then you were chatting about that, and then your writer fell off, and then I just kind of happened to.
Yeah. Well, you have really good instincts, and I think like that's something I value too when I'm working with people. Is like if people have good ideas, then I want to hear them. I don't want to shut down people like if it's not their department, but if they still want to contribute. Like I want to hear people and I want to work with people.
Yeah, I really appreciate that you didn't have an ego about that, because it was something that, like, I mean, I wasn't coming in like trying to be a writer. It just kind of happened.
Yeah, I think we were having like a Skype conversation, and you were just like
chatting, and then it just
kind of. But you had really good ideas, and I'm like, whoa, geez, yeah, gotta hear more from this guy.
Yeah, well, it's something that I think that actually inspired me to get more into it, because it's something I've been dabbling in. Like, I have this one big epic fantasy thing I've been writing for like almost 10 years now. God, I need to finish it. But it's something I don't get into as much as I should. Like I think I want to cultivate it more.
Well, I think that there's something to like working with someone, because I feel that too. Like I think I get more done when I'm working with someone and brainstorming with someone and like write that down. When I'm like alone and trying to write something, it's like staring into an abyss. And,
Yeah.
Yeah. So, but I think like having a conversation, like throwing around ideas, you sometimes you have someone to climb that mountain with, and I think that was what worked really well before.
Yeah.
If you want to bounce any ideas off me, let me know.
Actually, you know what? I have something that I wrote. I just wrote like it was a short film I wrote that was like, I didn't write a full script. I just wrote the basic story like about a year ago, and I never actually got it made. Maybe we should have a discussion about that, because I would actually love you to direct it, because you and me have a similar fucked up vision.
Yeah.
And it's kind of a horror film.
Ooh, I like horror.
Yeah. Maybe after we're done recording this, I'll give you a spiel about it. Maybe we could talk to your producer real quick.
Yeah. Producer.
Sorry. We'll do that. We'll do that after. Well, we'll introduce her so that she has a little. Just say, hey, this is this person. You just free promotion.
She's a producer I'm working with on this TV pilot.
Yes. Hello. What's your name?
Natalia.
Natalia? Okay, yes. I'm Mike.
Mike, nice to meet you.
So I don't know if you want to be on, but
yes.
Or maybe we could do a separate podcast later, because I'm interviewing people that are. Or can you come down, because people can only see your torso. There we go. Okay. So maybe we could do a separate podcast another day, you and me, because I'm trying to get anybody that's in the industry on. So, and for me this is actually a good way. I'm not the most outgoing person, like outside of work. Like I don't really talk to my friends outside of work. So this is kind of like for me to build my friendships a little better. And get to know directors better. So we'll get to know you better.
Is Lee your first guest?
Am I the first? Am I the first guest?
You're the third.
Oh, okay. It's still top three.
It's still top three.
Yeah, exactly. Well, you were definitely you were on the top list, of course, because you were a director I particularly liked working with. And also like I'm going to try to get everybody I worked with on at some point. If you want to give a quick blurb about yourself.
Quick blurb. Well, since it's about Lee, I'll say how I met Lee. So I was starting a project, and I needed to find someone that understood the vision of this project. And it's really interesting how when you speak to other directors, they could take what they read on the pages and create a whole new world. And sometimes, yes, my favorite film ever. Don't get me started on Disney right now.
I couldn't help myself.
I know, all the time. But Lee was the first director I spoke with that actually took her time to understand what I saw the world to be on the pages first, before sort of going in and giving her ideas. And it was like this open, collaborative conversation instead of like, this is what it should be. And so I learned a lot from listening to her, and like was like, oh, so if I bring in a director, I still have a voice in this project, which I was feeling a little worried about just from speaking with other directors. So like I would say from a producer standpoint is just to make sure, it's really important to find a director that understands the world you're trying to create and can elevate it and not sort of take it over, and then you get lost in it.
Yeah, and that goes right back to what I was saying, like when we worked together, because like I said, I came in as kind of an interloper on that project. And it worked out great. Like we never butted heads at all. Like when we were writing that, it was.
Yeah, it felt good. Like the flow. I remember, those like late night sessions, like going over the script. Like, what if we do this? What if we do that? That was really fun.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun, especially I'm not used to collaborating.
Natalia knows too.
Any
Yeah.
late night session sounds like Lee.
You get people's minds loosened up. You're not thinking about your.
Yeah.
So next time we have to, I would say we get us all drunk when we do it, but I don't drink alcohol, so that wouldn't work.
Same. Well, I'm a lightweight, so
Me too.
one and done pretty much.
Yeah, that's the shame because I was saying before I'm Irish. I do not fulfill that stereotype.
Well, I'm Caribbean, so I definitely let them down too. I can't.
Can't handle your rum.
Can't hold it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
So
Well,
I will. Yes, we will connect.
Yeah, we'll
Love
do
to
another.
chat more.
Yeah, we'll do another episode. So I'll close this out now, and then maybe we can talk more about that film if you guys want.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Sign off. This is the end of the episode, so could you guys say where to find you, and you send me links and later, and I'll put it in the descriptions. Also, send me your photos, or actually, if you could take a photo together, since you're both in the podcast, technically.
Aw.
Yeah, and because I put the episode up with a photo of the person that I interviewed.
Okay.
So,
Nice. Okay.
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 So,
Oh, I need to say something? Okay.
social media, website, whatever you want people to look at.
Just Google my name and everything will come up and
Google her, guys. On that level.
I'm going to put a specific link to you just because I have a feeling there's a lot of people that have your name.
Okay. Oh, Lee, yes, but Milby, no.
That's
It's a
true.
weird combination. There's a dude
Yeah.
named Sam Milby. I think he was a singer-actor, but that's not me. That's pretty easy.
Okay.
We can search, go to leemilby.com. It's basically the place. But
Okay.
if you search like Lee, if you Google Lee Milby, then like my storyboard stuff will come up and like all this other stuff and like probably some stuff that I don't want out there. But yeah.
On the internet, it's tough.
You can find me Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook at Be Your Craft, and then the website is beyourcraft.com. Not Beer Craft. People do that a lot, but it's Be Your Craft. Yeah, people think I say Beer Craft.
Beer craft?
Yeah.
That's actually pretty good. What's wrong with beer
But
craft?
then
If you ever want to start making beer, some craft beer.
Yeah. So yeah.
All right, cool. All right, well, thanks, guys, for being on the podcast, and we'll get Natalia on again. What was your full name?
Natalia Elizabeth.
Natalia, that's your last name?
Yes. It's actually
Okay.
my middle name, but no one can ever pronounce my last name correct. I think that's really weird. It's Averils. People always say Averellis.
I was going to say Averellis.
Well, you correct it now on the audio so that if people say it wrong, then we can slap them.
Averils.
Yes. But I
Okay.
usually go by Natalia Elizabeth anyway.
All right, cool. All right, well, thank you for being on, and I'm going to stop the recording now. Bye.